So folks, welcome to yet another JumpCloud webinar. We're happy to have you here today. Today's topic is remote device and app management utilizing JumpCloud's directory as a service, specifically the device management capabilities of our platform. And we're gonna focus in on that sort of core area of the platform today. I am Greg Keller. I am going to be your host today. I'm the company's Chief Technology Officer and the person who, at the time in 2014, with a very, very small group of people, launched this thing called Directory as a Service. Now we're a much larger global organization with thousands of customers around the globe, utilizing our service every day to support their core authentication and authorization and device management needs. Real quickly, I've probably spoken with many of you on the call today. I've been in software R&D for probably, longer than some of you have been in the industry itself, about 25 years. I've been doing startups for the last decade or more, exclusively focused on SaaS-based enterprise-focused technologies, namely security software. And over the course of that time, have really focused on product vision, taking nascent ideas, shaping them and bringing them to market. But more importantly, I have two folks today on this call with me that I'm honored to work with. One whom you'll see is Richard Hickson. Richard is a longtime friend, a former customer, and he is the sort of the archetypal example of our more progressive modern customer base in the IT administrators now that are moving their organizations fast and furiously to the cloud. So with that, Richard, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name's Richard. Up until recently, I was working for a group of companies based across a number of different sites. I actually think one of my colleagues, or potentially two of them, are logged in watching now. And I was trying to make my life easier by using JumpCloud and remote application management and managing systems. So that is pretty much me.
Excellent. It's, again, just for the folks on the call, Richard is calling in via GoToWebinar all the way from the UK, so we appreciate him and his evening being spent with us. Next on the list is a gentleman who I have the honor of calling my coworker. He is Mr. Dan Fay. Dan is, I don't even know where to begin. We hired Dan a few years ago and has risen from, he's a unicorn. So Dan, don't let your head get too big, but maybe put your earmuffs on while I explain who you are. This is a person who represents a wide swath of work for us, meaning deeply technical work, working with our customers, explaining low-level functions, providing automation, but all the way to the other end of the spectrum, Dan is an articulator. This is a person who understands technology and how to deliver that message as one of our prime product marketing managers to market. So Dan, why don't you intro yourself?
Hey everybody, so my name's Dan Fay. Thanks, Greg. I've been in IT for, I think, officially over 10 years. I've always been a technologist since I was little, so I've always had my hands in computers, breaking them and then having to fix them. So with that experience, I've gotten into administration, support, engineering, marketing, web dev, and some DevOps stuff, networking. So primary focuses are like my main heavy backgrounds in systems, a lot of virtualization, networking, best security practices, and scripting and data ops there. So a wide plethora of kind of like a Renaissance admin. I've had my hands in just about everything.
Good deal. Thanks, Dan. So for everybody here on the call, before we kick this off, I guess very fundamentally from JumpCloud, on behalf of us, we hope everybody here is doing well. I mean, this is surreal times. You are all faced with not only the challenges of your normal job, but trying to do so from home offices where you may be, in 1 hour, working on your work problem. And in the second hour of your day, you may be teaching your children as proxy teachers. So we just want you to know how much we empathize with your plight. This whole thing today is being recorded. This is, my local headquarters from my home, Dan's home, Richard's home, and I guarantee everyone chiming in through GoToWebinar now is doing so from your homes. So we hope you're hanging in there, and we hope that some of this info, we're going to get deeply technical. This is all about showing you the chops of what remote work could be like. So today we're discussing the immediate shift to remote work. And again, this is a JumpCloud presentation, so we're going to show you very, very specifically with JumpCloud how our admins out in the field, our customers, are sort of utilizing the software when they can't be physically next to some of their employees that may need help and assistance with devices and application installation, and a bunch of other subjects we'll talk today. But let's kind of set a backdrop, more or less a context of things. So again, I kicked off by saying I've been in this industry for 25 years, so much so that when I came in to the industry in '93, this predated Windows. It was pre-Windows 3, and in fact, we were using DOS terminals. But my office, like many of yours, actually looked like this, meaning we had cubicles and we had these big terminal-based computers that were immovable. They had a monitor, a big fat monitor on the desk, nothing like you see here with these beautiful flat screens. I'm talking about these huge 50-pound monitors with the degauss button, and you all understand, what that was like. And you'd come into your workstation and you'd log in with a terminal computer probably sitting right next to you. And guess what? You're computing, you're on the domain. So this is, when we talk about the quote traditional aspect of things, obviously this really equates to brick and mortar offices where you have an Ethernet system, your local area network, you understand the security implications of entering an office and computing, basically getting access to resources that had traditionally been on premise. Obviously, over the course of the last 2 decades, things have lifted and shifted into the cloud. That has brought myriad issues to sort of traditional IT folks, and how do you network and terminal out from your local on-prem, frankly, a directory up to cloud-based resources. And we have plenty of information in other presentations on that specific problem space. But this picture, generally speaking, empathizes with folks that come into an office every day and get their work done. Now, fast forward, here we are in our new reality. You have the challenge of, guess what, a worldwide global pandemic kicking us all in the gut, and rapidly making IT people think about mechanisms, solutions, ways that an employee can be as productive and secure at home as they are when they walk into the confines of your well-secured, physical domain. So, certainly many companies have had, remote operations pretty much dialed. There are, frankly, companies, unicorn-sized companies, valued at over $1 billion that have no offices. So, those are the outliers, those are the aberrations, or those are the inspirations of modern companies looking to compute almost exclusively from the cloud. But the more you focus on this, you see that the device is becoming the vestige. The device, wherever you and your device are, that is now the edge of your corporate network. So how do you make that stuff secure? And frankly, in an emergency situation, how do you serve your customers better, i.e. your employees, when they have needs? Again, we'll talk about things like application installation and things of that nature. Just as an anecdote, we had a conversation with a customer who came in recently because of the COVID issue and their need to move their basically call center people out to their homes. It was a big problem though. They were all on workstations, like physically, installed, just like you see in the left-hand picture here, and they had to physically box these things up and ship them to their employees' houses. No joke. So this is like the range, the spectrum of what call it pain that our IT customers are going through. Some have it well, and some really are trying to figure out how to quickly modernize and lift and shift to the cloud. So let's move a little bit deeper. Today, obviously, we're going to talk about JumpCloud unabashedly. We're here to just give you guys some ninja skills on how to leverage the platform more thoroughly with remote operations. Specifically, we're going to talk about devices today. Just humor me for 90 seconds. For those that are on the call that have, frankly, never signed up for JumpCloud or aren't very sort of intimate with it, we are a directory as a service. We are a fully cloud-based access control and device management platform. So said in a cheeky kind of way, think about what Active Directory and LDAP have been, amazingly have been for the last couple of decades. We essentially modernized that whole concept, brought it to the world in a highly secure, highly available cloud-based mechanism, and encourage you to sort of join any resource with it, any operating system, any resource, be it cloud-based or on-premise. It could be a network authentication, an application authentication, a device authentication, etc., or obviously a web-based app. We do so through the deep management of protocols, SAML, LDAP, Radius, and with respect to devices, the area we're really going to focus on today, the installation of an agent, a highly secure, very efficient agent to perform all the tasks that JumpCloud needs to, and you need to as an admin to remotely reach these machines and do your work. In fact, the demonstrations today will exclusively be demonstrating how the agent works and can perform those operations, be it installing applications, installing users, setting multi-factor, setting full disk encryption. All those things are done through a single lightweight secure agent. So now, very specifically, let me go back a slide. So this wheel concept, think of this sort of circular image you see on the left. This is sort of JumpCloud if we, as we sort of visually articulate it, right? So you see the whole ring of things surrounding the core directory. Those ring of things are basically the mechanisms that you bind stuff to our core directory. We're going to focus, now that I transition to the next slide, to the aspect called device management. And this includes not only MDM style management chores for Mac, Windows, and Linux, but also deep authentication chores, password management, multi-factor authentication, and most critically, the user account management. So if you to understand what we're doing here, think of it as all of what you kind of have known in MDM solutions, but bound directly to your directory service, in this case, the JumpCloud core directory. So again, we're fully cross-platform. So everything we're showing today, we're actually show you a blend of some macOS stuff and some Windows stuff, but it's fully transparent across Mac, Windows, and Linux. A couple of the highlights, of course, we distribute through the cloud or user accounts, or can bind to pre-existing accounts that exist on the machine. We are the ones responsible for laying down the password on those machines. So when you log in, that password is being sort of owned and managed, including all of its complexity settings and all that goodness from JumpCloud. We do all of the multi-factor authentication. I'm not sure if many folks on the call are aware of this, but if you need to really harden these machines and not only provide a username and a password to get into the box or the Linux host, you can set multi-factor too. So using a TOTP code, we provide you that extra level of security on these machines. This week, we're proud to announce the launch officially of our Apple MDM support, but this will again bleed into all of Apple and Linux management. So all of the policy, the configuration management. You may know these concepts, for example, like GPOs in the world of Active Directory. Think of us and our core MDM service as providing that across operating systems. So GPOs for every OS. What we're going to focus on today is command execution. That's the second to the last bullet you see. This is the ability for you as admins to write code. Could be Python, Chocolatey, PowerShell, Shell itself, right? And be able to launch that script or series of scripts across fleets of systems in order to do things, anything. You know, the agent itself is root, so we have control over that box securely, and you from the cloud can own it. You can install things, make configuration changes, anything that your heart desires, because that agent is waiting for you to send it commands. And lastly, system insights, which is the ability for that agent to slurp data from that machine, asset data, things about the host. For example, who across my employee base has a battery on their machine that is about to die? We can do that. Who across these fleet of machines has a Chrome extension installed that they shouldn't? We can do that. System Insights hosts about roughly 200 independent data points about these hosts that you ingest and learn about these machines in order to take action to manage the asset. That could be for security reasons, for myriad reasons. So here's where we do the big trade-off. I'm going to pass the sort of proverbial virtual mic over to my partner in crime here, Dan Fay. And Dan, why don't you now take a deep dive and walk these folks with Richard through our whole world of device management.
Totally. Awesome. Thanks, Greg. So if you don't have an org already, you can sign up for free, 10 users free forever. And once you do that, you'll sign up with basically your account or your email account as an administrator, or log into the JumpCloud admin portal here. So I'm just going to log into my demo account. And once you're logged in, you'll enter the admin portal. You'll see the left-hand menu. So our UI UX is incredibly simple if you haven't used it. Very intuitive, not like the olden days of dealing with AD multi-Windows or Azure, where it's very complex and a very high learning curve. So with JumpCloud, we try to keep it as simple as possible with UX UI for both the admins as well as the users. So you'll be initially taken to your users list, as you see here. I have just a couple test users. But more importantly, the systems piece. So I do have all 3 operating system types already added. I already have the agents installed. So the way that we work with systems is that the agent itself is installed on any of these operating systems. Of course, with Linux, you can use this curl command. And then Windows and Mac have an installer, a PKG and an EXE that use a connect key. One of the recent releases that we've done is allow your end users to install the agent themselves. So with that, you can simply enable that within your org settings. So there's a lot of stuff in here, but this is the main one. If you want your end users to install the agent, this gives them the ability to log into their user portal once they've been added to JumpCloud and verified. So like, for example, Bob here could log into his user console, download the agent from his user console, have his own his own connect key that's used during the installer. The wizard is super simple. All it asks for is basically the connect key. Once the agent is installed in the background, either by yourself as an admin or by the end user, regardless, once the agent is installed on the system, it creates a 60-second cadence securely to JumpCloud. So any updates to users, policies, commands you run, any changes to that system or its associated binding resources will be updated within 60 seconds. So with systems, again, we're vendor agnostic, so Mac, Windows, and Linux. But once they've been added, let's just take a look at this example Mac that I have in here. So with this, you can actually see on the left-hand side, the MDM commands. This machine is not enrolled in MDM as of yet. We'll kind of take a look at that through the webinar today. I do have system insights on all of my systems. So with system insights, as Greg was talking earlier, you can get uptime, memory, storage available. You can get a plethora of tables and information. And then using the details drop down here, you can pull, if you want to take a look at like storage mounts, disk encryption, shared folder, and then you could export those to CSVs as well. So that way, if you want to retain those that data point or that list, you can export that table. Or better yet, if you're familiar with PowerShell or using the JumpCloud PowerShell module, highly recommend it. It will automate your life. So the JumpCloud PowerShell module is a way to interface with JumpCloud's admin portal here, as we see in the UI. It's just a different method. It uses PowerShell connecting to our API in the background to basically manage. So you can actually write your own PowerShell scripts to manage the entire JumpCloud admin portal itself and all of your daily tasks. So super expedite. You can create your own scripts and say, yeah, this is a daily task I do every day. I just want to hit one button. And then all you would have to do is write that script. And then, we have a full wiki, which we'll go over as well. That whole wiki gives you a bunch of examples and tables, goes into basically how to formulate the commands, parameters and arguments that you can use, how it interacts, and a lot of examples that you can basically just copy and paste and use in your own environment. So if you're not using that, highly recommend it. And then along with systems, with the actual system agent and communication, the user takeover and binding and all that good stuff, we also have policies. So this is one thing that makes JumpCloud stand out from the rest, is that because we're vendor agnostic and because we're domainless, we're working for the domainless enterprise, and especially in the remote work environment where a domain might not be possible running AD. We also work with Linux, we work with Mac and Windows. So we have policies for all three operating systems. So if I just take a look at the Mac policies here, it's all click and configure. There's no, you don't have to set up specific really long GPO trees or get lost in the menus there or have conflictions there. This is all intuitive. You simply click. There might be a parameter or a variable. So for example, if I want to set a lock screen, right? So if I take a look at the lock screen, I hit configure, there's a timeout in settings. So I can set this to be 60 seconds. I would then apply it to a system group I've created. So in this case, my Mac systems, and hit save. That would then apply it to all of the systems in that system group relationship. So that way I know as an admin that this policy is applied. I can also look at the system group itself, check its policies tab, and see all of the policies that are applied to that system group, and then look at the systems list to say, all right, cool, all of my Macs are covered. So super simple, super intuitive. Same thing for Linux and Windows as well. It's very straightforward. So I'll touch a little bit about MDM. So this is brand new, just released, so this is fresh. So we do have the MDM configuration where you can sign up with Apple if you already have, and create, basically download the profile, get the profile set up, and then enroll your systems in MDM. The benefit to this is that you're given from Apple a signed profile, a JumpCloud signed profile, and then you can use these commands, which this is primarily where we'll be working, where Rich and I will be working today in this list. So with these commands, you can write it for Linux, Windows, Mac, Bash, and PowerShell. You can run it as root or some other selective user that you want to run it as. Launch events can be either manual, scheduled, repeating, or run on trigger webhook, which I'll show the webhooks today. That'll save you a lot of time too. You can also push payloads. So this is actually how the MDM profile push works, is that once you get the profile and you have a fleet of Macs, we can simply find that MDM command that are written here. Again, this is also public. So this is in our KB, it's also in our GitHub. So if you want to take a look at this, I have this profile that I've downloaded from my Apple Dev lab. I've simply uploaded it to the payload, and then I'm basically pushing it under the profiles for the mobile config. I've selected my Mac system group, and then I would simply hit save, and then I would execute that command. So I'd execute that to enroll my Mac system, which is currently not in MDM. I would simply run that to enroll it. And we would need to make sure that the Mac system itself is in the Mac group. Save. So now it's a part of the Mac group. It's also going to get all those policies that we had applied to the Mac group as well. I hit commands, find the MDM profile, select it, hit run now. This will queue up the command on the JumpCloud side. Within 60 seconds, the Mac will reach out to JumpCloud asking for any updates. We say, yep, you have all these policies, since we've added it just to the system group now of macOS, so it's going to get those Mac policies. Likewise, it's going to be running this command. So that command is queued. Agent's like, what else? We say, yep, here's a bash command you need to run. It's this Mac MDM. Here's the profile config. Install it however you write that bash script. It'll then apply that policy, or the policies and the profile to the Mac. If you have dep enrollment as well, you could do auto dep enrollment based on the system ID or the system tag. From macOS, you can configure dep if you have an Apple business or education account with Apple if you have dep enabled. So we'll let this run, give it about 60 to 90 seconds or so. It'll return us a result code saying that 0 is successful. Anything above 0 is an error code of some sort, and we'll actually give you the true output directly from the shell. So if we run, for example, I want to list my Mac local accounts, I simply select that. It's basically just a DSEL command, lists all the users, scripts out roots and daemons. So that'll return us back on the code. So before I really dive into any more of this, I'd like to hand it over to Richard. And Richard's going to demo a lot of the remote application install. So not only can we do JumpCloud like remote commands and remote commands or policies and systems, etc., but we can also use these JumpCloud remote commands to install applications. And if those applications as well have SAML or SSO backing, which JumpCloud also covers, those installed applications could leverage JumpCloud as the identity provider to do the authentication there. So for example, Slack or Office 365, and you have the directory sync enabled and SSO, they can log into the installed application using their JumpCloud credentials. But that application is installed locally, but again, it's reaching out to JumpCloud to do the authentication. So that's another methodology there, but I'll hand it over to Richard.
So one of the things that I aimed to solve with JumpCloud was one of the companies, they tended to buy a lot of their own kit and start setting it up themselves, which left me in a bit of a difficult situation because I wasn't necessarily in their office at all, sometimes even in their country. So I needed a way to manage what applications we were approving, what was being done about it, which was where JumpCloud came in with managing the systems. And I sat down in front of the command panel and thought I should be able to make this do what I needed to do with the applications. Before I'd even read the JumpCloud GitHub, I think there's loads of scripts on there that you can go and have a look at. I actually wrote some of my own for installing browsers, for installing an app called DocUtil. But I've written loads, and I mean they just make my life so much easier. You literally, once you've set it up, just click run now, and on the way I've set them up, we should see them start downloading some folders into here. There we go. Which will download all the DMGs and it will start installing the application straight away. And I installed that for quite a few different programs. Hopefully these all still work. And yeah, so hopefully we should have a browser installed at some point very, very soon. And I mean, this, like I said, all came about because I had so many users that were setting up their own Macs, and I didn't want them to have free reign on installing applications. So once we had enrolled them, we could then change their user into a standard user from an admin user. We could then roll out the applications that they needed. That's about it, I think. I mean, I haven't dived massively deep into it to Dan and Greg's level, and hopefully Chrome was installed.
Just as a side note, while we're looking at the Chrome install here, for the audience members, we will be able to provide you some of the, the stubs of these scripts to get you bootstrapped. So you're not scratching your head. And if you're sort of, frankly, new to IT, we want to be able to get you more deeply into these processes. So again, when we email you back, the links to the recording, all that kind of stuff, we'll provide you with some of the bootstrapping scripts here.
I'm not sure.
Also, while Richard is demonstrating some of this, let me just add, we're seeing an example of a browser, just an application being installed remotely. script is run, brings down a binary, that Richard has hosted at some third-party location. Some of our customers use S3, some are using file server, but it can go beyond that. If we stay down the focal point of a browser, what about browser extensions? So all of that is possible as well, loading those extensions. And frankly, removing extensions in certain circumstances. That's a good combination between the analysis that System Insights will give you and then remediating, i.e. pulling that software from the box using commands once you've done your scanned analysis through System Insights. Frankly, many of your employees may be installing browser plugins that you're not comfortable with. So this is a mechanism to sort of remediate that.
So that has done. And over to you, Dan.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, we can take a look. So we saw that mobile profile was pushed down from Mac for MDM. So again, when you run a command, the result codes will be shown here. This is straight from the shell. So for example, running this in Bash, this comes back. We see the user accounts, again, simple DSCL, just to see who's there. And then for MDM, we push that mobile config down. If we take a look at this, we see now that it's enrolled in MDM. It has the MDM pill, that little green pill next to the Mac system itself. And now we have the MDM command, so I can lock the system, remotely restart it, shut it down, or do remote device wipe. So if we want to completely wipe it from fresh, if something happens to the laptop, gets lost, stolen, something like that, you have full control. So that way it will ensure that your company assets, proprietary data, information about the user and his identity is also wiped from that machine if you use like erase. If you lock it, it will do a system OS lock where you would set up a PIN code of some sort. And that way only you or your IT team knows that PIN code, and then you would use that PIN code to then unlock the machine once you get it back from wherever it might have gone. So along with Apple, we do have the ability to do Windows application management as well. So I'm going to talk about that now. We do have a really good, very simple integration with Chocolatey. So if you're unfamiliar with Chocolatey, I have their website tab open here. So let's go back to the actual homepage. So Chocolatey itself it's pretty much an open source package manager for Windows. They house over 7,000 packages or applications in their repo. And then using very simple, very basic commands, you can actually manage the applications that are installed on your entire Windows system fleet using the JumpCloud remote commands. So with this, like if we go back to the commands menu here, I have a bunch of Chocolatey commands already written. I actually have these set up on API webhooks. So one of the other benefits to using this is that if you're using API callers, if you can use curl if you want to instantiate this as well. Me personally, I like using the PowerShell module by JumpCloud because it's a one-line command. I don't have to remember write out this huge, massive curl header and all the information in a curl string. So with that, I use PowerShell now that it's pretty much open source for all operating systems, and I can run the JumpCloud PowerShell command to install Chocolatey on all of my Windows systems. So we see the Windows systems are here. It's on that system group. If we go to, say, my test Windows system here, BFA Win 10, it's a Windows 10 VM I'm running right now. Take a look at the systems group. We're going to add it to the Windows systems group. That's going to inherit the policies there as well. Going to go to commands. Now I could run this manually by simply clicking this and hitting run, but I'm actually going to show it through the JumpCloud PowerShell module. So let me go through here. I have a bunch of other pre-written scripts that I've done myself. So some of these are on our GitHub. We'll send those links out later, but you could do, again, a lot of automation just by doing like a / and then the command itself. So with the JumpCloud PowerShell module, I've loaded PowerShell. I've authenticated to JumpCloud using my administrator API key. Once I'm authenticated, I can do any of the JumpCloud PowerShell module commands. There's the wiki tab that's up in my browser that goes through, I mean, it's like 20 pages long. You control F what you're looking for, it's there. There's also a table of contents on the right-hand side. So I'm going to invoke the command install Choco. So I've triggered that command remotely by running that one command. So what this is doing to take a look at the actual Windows script, again, this is fully public. You simply just have to copy and paste the command. There's no like actual scripting or customization that you have to do. This one's literally just copy and paste. So copy and paste from our website into the command body, select Windows, PowerShell, select your system group of Windows. And then you can select what type of launch event if you want to run it manually. Or run it via API webhook as I've just done. This is triggering in the back end to install Chocolatey. So once Chocolatey is installed, it runs as a service in the background in Windows. And anytime that we instantiate a remote command from JumpCloud to the Windows machine of like, for example, Choco install X or whatever. So there's, again, a billion packages out there. If I want to install Firefox, Chrome, Notepad++, PuTTY, Slack, there's again thousands, but it's that simple. This is the command. This is as complicated as it gets, which is great. So just Choco install the application -y. You can search Chocolatey for the applications that you're looking for. So in this instance, let's look for, again, we could look for Firefox just as an example. So there's Firefox 7601. That's the command. You copy paste that, put a -y at the end of it, which will do the auto install. If you don't, it's going to prompt the installer. So just do a -y at the end of it. Copy and paste that command into here, and then basically save your command and run it whenever you need to. So taking a look at the install Chocolatey, we see the command that was run. And again, we see the entire script that was run. So it looks like it was run there. Secure channel issue, that's fine. So once that's run, we're going to go ahead and if Chocolatey went through, which it looks like it did on the bfay-win10, there we go. That's because it was installed already on the other one. So we can actually see the full code, the full listing from the PowerShell itself, showing that it has now been successfully created, that it's successfully been installed. The JC task went through appropriately. Everything is great. We're done. So Chocolatey's been installed. I didn't have to custom code. I didn't have to write my own script. I didn't even have to know how to use PowerShell. So with this, I'm going to install some corporate applications. So I'm going to run this manually. So I'm going to flip the webhook to manual just to show what that looks like. Hit save. Again, make sure my Windows system group is applied. It is. I'm going to highlight the command. But before we do that, let's take a look at the Windows machine that I have open. So I have Firefox, or I already have Chrome installed. So the benefit with Chocolatey is it's going to do a package find. So for example, we're installing Chrome and Firefox through that command. It's going to see that Chrome is already installed. So what it's going to do is Chocolatey is actually going to take over that package in the background. So if things are already installed, no worries. Chocolatey handles it in the background for you, and it will be then a Chocolatey managed package. So for example, if I look for Firefox, Firefox is not installed, and neither is Notepad++ or Slack. So I have Notepad, no Notepad++. So as this VM is running in the background, communicating with JumpCloud every 60 seconds, let's go ahead and kick off that script. So I'm going to hit run now. That's going to queue up the command. That bfay-win10 system, because it's a part of the Windows systems group, will reach out in 60 seconds. Hey, do I have any updates? We say, yes, you do. You have this Choco install command for Firefox, Chrome, Notepad++, Slack, whatever was in that command. Chocolatey is then triggered on the back end because we're calling Chocolatey via the command. Chocolatey is then going to run in the background, download the packages for us, install the packages for us. Everything is handled. So when using Chocolatey package installers, because it's doing the download and the install silently, I generally would recommend setting a longer timeout. Some of the timeout, I think the default timeout is 120 seconds. So I would increase that just because of download speeds. You don't know what their home internet's going to be like, so it could take much longer. Hopefully my internet speed is fairly decent. So we'll see how it goes. But we'll give this probably 2 or 3 minutes to initiate that in the background, make sure that Chocolatey handles Firefox, Chrome, and the other applications that are installed. So we'll come back to this for now. So as it's going, again, Linux the exact same way. So actually, if you're running, like, regardless of whether you're running rel base or dev base, So like, for example, CentOS or RHEL, Debian, Ubuntu, I've created specific Linux groups for those two flavors. So I can actually do yum and apt-get calls. So I can actually do full updates or upgrades and invoke those remotely on a schedule. So for example, I want to keep my Linux operating systems on the latest patches, the latest library updates, the latest kernel, all of it. So with that, I've written, again, if you're a Linux administrator, this is fairly basic. So apt-get -y to say yes automatically, and apt-upgrade or upgrade. So I run this every single day to my Linux fleet. So anything that's running my either Deb or Ubuntu base, it's running as repeating every day at 0500. And then it basically runs in the background, make sure that all my Linux systems are up to date, or at least my Debian and Ubuntu base. And then likewise the same for my RHEL. It's again just using yum as a package manager there for the ones that are using yum. Cool. So I'm going to refresh this real quick. We'll see if it's still going. Probably is. BFA 110. Hey. So let's go ahead and open up the details. So as we can see, that was the install of Chocolatey. Where's my apps? Oh, there he is. Okay, so this is still going. But let's go ahead and dive over to the Windows machine. So it's not entirely done yet. JumpCloud has not received the all done code, but it's still working in the background. So we actually see that Firefox is now installed on the desktop. We're good there. So Firefox has been taken care of. I can now open up Firefox. It's an installed application that is being managed by Chocolatey, which is being commanded by JumpCloud, meaning that now I can use Firefox's this browser. You can also use remote commands to Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever, to set default browsers, change config settings, all that good stuff. You can set those defaults by leveraging PowerShell or Bash within the JumpCloud remote commands. And then Notepad++ should be on here as well. That should be a fairly lightweight. Maybe not yet. Not yet. So that's still going. And Slack's probably still going. That's a fairly decent size exe. But as we can see, as that goes further, that's why I say set a longer timeout setting. If you set it to 60 seconds, it'll time out. It'll still run in the background, but that timeout for the wait or for the completion set may not receive that, because if you set it for 60 seconds, install take 120. The end system already has it installed. Chocolatey's already managing it, but that callback has exceeded that timeout expiry time. So just be aware of that. Make sure you extend it, test it, time it, and then set your timing there for a rough estimate based on your internet speed. Cool. So, I mean, other things I'll highlight with the PowerShell commands. You can do all your system administration and system, pretty much JumpCloud management in the admin portal itself using the PowerShell module. If you're new to PowerShell, uncomfortable with PowerShell, there's this page here, which is the home page of the wiki for it. There's all of these commands here, or you can start with some of the basics. So the module command basics, you can get started, look at some really basic commands. Again, this page is super long. It's meant to be the all-encompassing PowerShell kind of cheat sheet for what you're looking for JumpCloud administration. Simply copy and paste the commands of what you're looking for. So like, if we want to take a look at, say, like if I want to look at system groups, I just Control F, I see my system groups. I actually see that there's a whole section for systems. And then I can take a look at these commands and get rough information or rough description of what it is. I can simply highlight, copy, and paste this into my JumpCloud PowerShell module, and then basically get all of the properties from that system object. So for example, I'm going to do this in my PowerShell. I'm going to simply copy, get JC system, get member. I'm going to then open up my PowerShell module, which is running here. I'm going to simply paste. And I'm getting all the properties on the specific system, or the systems in general. So other pieces as well, if you want to look at system associations, if you want to say that, hey, I need to know which systems don't have any users attached. I want to know what systems don't have MFA, and you want to run that remotely and super quick. Simply just use the JumpCloud PowerShell module. There are commands in here already pre-written for that, and how to execute it and change that MFA flag from true to false. So along with system management, we do manage the user accounts. So the accounts, the passwords, the policies, the commands, and MFA. So if you're leveraging JumpCloud with Linux, Mac, and Windows, because we're system agnostic and you want to secure these, you can actually enable MFA on any of these operating systems. The MFA base is TOTP, so whether you're using Google Authenticator, Duo's TOTP app, Authy, FreeOTP, again, there's probably several dozen OTP or TOTP apps out there. Any one works fine. And then you can layer system MFA on this piece by going down to the settings or using the JumpCloud PowerShell method to do it remotely. Enable TOTP, yep, and I hit save. That then enforces TOTP MFA on the system. Now, when doing that, you also want to make sure that your users that are applied to that system also have MFA. So again, Bob's MacBook, Bob has MFA here. Bob's MFA will be then enrolled. So that way, anytime he needs, access to the machine, to his applications, whether they're installed or through SSO, everything that he has access to and needs access to in order to make work happen is layered by some factor of MFA. So let's take a look at that. Let's wake up the Mac. Oops. We also see all the profiles that have applied, so that the MDM profile is there. All the JumpCloud policy settings for my macOS system have also been applied to the profiles list. So if you're curious of where they go, check your profiles menu and system prefs. So we'll give this about 30 seconds to get that MFA piece. I'm going to do a full log out, and we'll take a look at the MFA being applied there. Same thing for Windows. So Windows has this feature, if you want to apply MFA to it as well, Windows has this feature. So if you want to layer MFA before system login, as well as to all of the interconnected SSO apps, or just to secure the device in general before they get into the applications that are installed locally on their system. Windows has this feature in Windows 10. I don't remember the exact build. I want to say it's like 1906, I think is when they started. It's called ARSO, so automatic restart sign-on. You can actually disable that from JumpCloud using commands. I actually have it pre-built. There is a command for that in our KB system. So if you just look up disable ARSO, what it does by default, it's turned on. So that way, if you have MFA layered on top of your system, if you reboot, it won't ask for MFA. Only a full shutdown and power on will it layer MFA. So with that disabling RSO, it basically kills that live user session token, completely stops it upon reboot. And then when it reboots and it comes back online, the user will then be prompted for their username or their password and their MFA token. If that is not turned off, it will not ask for MFA until a full shutdown power on. So that's a Windows feature that they've released. So again, taking a look at this piece. So lock screens do not apply MFA. So if the user's already logged in, they have a live session token and the lock screen applies, it's not gonna ask for MFA. It's just a macOS thing. So we're gonna go ahead and log in here to my macOS system. I'm gonna then do a log out. And if my VM cooperates with me today, there we go. So now we can see that the password and the TOTP token are being requested before Bob can access his system itself. His applications that are installed locally and that TOTP token as well will be used when he accesses any SSO application or the JumpCloud user portal to access said applications. So for example, I'm gonna log in with Bob's password. I have my phone somewhere. We're going to then open this up with Google Authenticator. That's what I'm using. It's free and super simple. It works great. I'm then going to type in that TOTP token. Whoops, I might have typed in the password wrong. And then it's authenticating locally, verifying the password and the TOTP token. Now, again, this does work offline. So TOTP does work offline, logins locally work offline. So if you're on the bus, on an airplane, on a train, you lose internet connectivity at your house, anything like that, you can still log into your system. So it's not like it has to be tethered to the internet or like domain bound like 80 systems are. This works entirely within its bubble. Now, any changes, modifications, commands, any change or mod or delta that you apply to the system or the user that's applied to the system will not take effect until it gets back on internet. But the user can continue to work on their system as needed. So with this, now that we've completely logged in, I have access to this, and we can open up the console at JumpCloud.com to access the SSO applications if I had Slack, or if I had.
Dan, why don't you pull down your JumpCloud icon?
Yeah.
And this is a little, well, I don't want to say little. Call this before you click this, let me just, think of this as the iceberg moment. Dan's going to click Open User Portal. And what you're witnessing here in the spirit of the tip of the iceberg is the first installment of our passwordless WebAuthn authentication. Oops, I guess not. You don't have that set on your machine yet. But note that for those that have it enabled, we haven't enabled Dan's org for this yet. Dan's Bobby character here would never have to enter in his password again. So we're using all of that passwordless technology under the covers. That was total out of left field kind of example here, Dan. Sorry about that, but I just wanted to inform the audience about that new technology we have now rolling out.
Yep, all good. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that capability itself basically will help where once the user signed into the system is the gateway. Like, it is the gateway to everything. And they want to use all of these apps. So for example, my Salesforce, like I have a demo Salesforce account that I'm using. Bob can simply click on this, hit on Open User Portal. That will log him in automatically to this piece. Simply click on SFDC. It's then going to automatically log me in through SSO SAML 2.0 to my Salesforce tenant. And then if my internet plays nicely, there we go. So now we're logged in as Bob, and Bob is completely managed here. Now with and I know this is like commands and application management and system management, the other benefit to this as well, and I'm actually going to show that we're going to get rid of Bob. So I'm going to simply just open up my JumpCloud user portal. I'm going to highlight Bob. I can either delete him or suspend him. So there's two methods. If I'm suspending him, it doesn't remove the account from the list, but I'm going to suspend him first. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and suspend the user account. Suspended. 60 seconds, Bob will be both kicked out of his Windows and his Mac machine roughly in 60 seconds. So we can actually revoke user access. Say you're offboarding someone or they're leaving the company or what have you. So we can see that Bob's now been kicked out. Bob is now kicked out. And the other two users that I have on here is Laura Mipsum and my super admin account. And the same thing could be applied on the Mac system here. Oops. So Bob it'll receive that command here momentarily, and then it's going to then log Bob out, and he will no longer be able to log in. So as we can see now, it's got the command, Bob is now kicked out. Bob is no longer. Hopefully my VM doesn't freeze, but. So Bob doesn't have access to it anymore. So even if Bob tried to log in, it's actually going to say, sorry, your account has been disabled. Yep, so it's been disabled. And then once that's been done with Max MDM, I say, you know what? We're also going to lock that system. So I'm going to do a system lock. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example. Lock it. Very shortly, this is going to do a system lock on the system itself, where that way, you can actually, there it goes. So reboots, locks the system, and that way when you receive the system back, you can then unlock it with that same PIN. Likewise, we do file vault recovery key escrow as well. So if you're managing BitLocker or file vault, you can simply take a look at that key. If you need to unlock it for any reason, this is stored within JumpCloud. So you don't need to write it down, sticky notes, Excel spreadsheets, nothing like that. We handle that on the back end, and it's appended to the system object as well. So it gives you full flexibility. But I know we're almost at the top of the hour, so I am going to pause. And I want to thank everybody for their time, and I'm going to hand it back over to Greg.
Indeed, yeah. I'm like, when I'm on mute, there are so many questions here. It's incredible, really awesome questions, and I appreciate that. So I tried to get back to as many as I could. I encourage you, if you are in either case, either a JumpCloud customer or someone interested, please ask our support team, who Dan and I work with our support team. We are global, 24/7. So please ask any of these questions we weren't able to answer to you directly to that team, and we'll get you responses. We are at the top of the hour. Again, just to reinforce, this is being recorded. We will be emailing you all back with the recording, in addition to any of the helpful resources that we talked about here today, i.e. scripts similar to what Richard has shown, the Chocolatey information many of you asked questions about. We will give you sort of the ninja tricks and bootstrap scripts to start you there for browser installs and all that other kind of goodness that we talked about today. And again, let me reinforce on behalf of all three of us, Richard, myself, and Dan, honestly, we wish you good health. Hang in there. Hopefully tricks like this that we can show you on how to exploit the JumpCloud platform when your customers, i.e. your employees, are far away and not physically near you. We hope that this is stuff that makes you more productive and eases some of that pain that you may be experiencing. With that, thank you so much. We're going to sign off for today, and thanks again for joining a JumpCloud webinar.